Alright, so welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden, and today is harvesting day. So we're going to start doing some harvesting, and we're going to start with my cucumbers. Alright, so if you can kind of get a picture here of what we got going on, you can see we got some big cucumbers. And then over here, we got some that are a little smaller. You kind of got to look for cucumbers, because, you know, if you're not careful, you'll miss them. Got to move the leaves aside. So you can see, like this monster right here, kind of hiding down in there. So, when it comes to cucumbers, there's a couple things you want to keep in mind. One is the size of your jar. Well, all right, first off, one is, what do you want to do with the cucumber? If you're just going to eat them, and put them in a salad or cook them fresh, then that's not really a problem. But a cucumber this size is actually a little bit big. Now these are really prickly. Some of them, as they grow bigger, will start to smooth out, just depending upon the variety of cucumber you have. See, but you can kind of see the little prickles on here. This one is a very naughty cucumber. Naughty cucumber. At any rate, it's been doing bad things in the garden. But the problem is when they start to get too big, what you can end up with is really large seeds. And when the seeds start to get big, they get a little harder to eat. So then you're kind of left with, do I want to pick the seeds out of my cucumber? And they also can turn a little bit more bitter. So they're better when they're small for a lot of things. Another thing you want to look at is if you want to can them or put them in jars and make them into pickles, you want them a little bit more like this size. All right? And this one is a lot smoother even though it's smaller, which is kind of interesting to me because of the same variety, actually the same plant. So, it is a good idea to harvest your cucumbers early, because the more you harvest, the more the plant will grow, because it's trying to reproduce, and it reproduces by creating seeds. And if the seeds aren't growing, then it's like, oh no, I need to make more. So let's go around and see what else we can find in here. We've got a bunch of them. And we'll use them for different things, depending upon the size. But I'm looking primarily right now to get some to pickle. So I want some of the smaller ones. I think that one's a little odd shaped. We'll take it. Nice one right there. A couple of nice ones for pickling. You want to pickle them whole. And you can take the bigger ones like this. Again, if the seeds aren't too big, and you can just slice them into spears and put them in that way. Trying not to step on my stuff. Move this out. I leave these because I'm trying to grow some seeds. Anything else in there? You really got to look, because sometimes you'll miss one and come back the next day and you're like, oh man, that's a huge cucumber I missed. There's that one. This one's still a little skinny. I don't know if you can you see that? We're going to let it grow up a bit. I do like getting them when they're smoother. And it seems like they're a little more mature then. Alright. So, a pretty good haul on the cucumbers. Well, hang on, I got one more plant, don't I? Never mind. That's a nice one right there. That's a perfect cucumber. Look at that. So pretty. And I've got a lot of little cucumbers still growing in here. Tons of them. Oh, there's another one hiding. So now that's more like what you're looking for when it comes to a good pickling size. And then, like I said, these are smoother. You can kind of get a good view of those. You see how the skin is a lot smoother, and you don't have near as many prickles on it, which is usually a good indication that they're ripe. So I really don't know that there's an unripe cucumber. I think that as long as, you know, they're yay bigger, so they start to get a little fat with some juice in them, they should be fine. All right, so that's my haul so far. Quite a few cucumbers, probably 4 or 5 pounds, all for the cost of a few seeds. Now, come on over here. As we go, I want to show you some things. This is mustard greens. Now, mustard greens have been eaten up something fierce by bugs. But in the early spring, they were really nice, really pretty. So a lot of this is going to end up being compost, and it provides some shade from my lettuce over there. But you can see that they're starting to produce flowers, and shortly afterwards, let me see if I can find one. They should start producing seed pods, I believe. I haven't grown mustard for seed yet, so I'm not 100% on if the seeds are going to come out of the flower or if they're going to come out of these little, well, that's a leaf. So I was thinking maybe they'd have pods, but we'll get back to you on that. So I'm going to let them seed out. And then let's come over here and we're going to look at green beans. Now green beans, of course you see I got some carrots in here. By the way, I planted carrots and I put mulch on either side of them and just kind of separated the mulch, but the mulch migrated back on and the carrots did not produce nearly as many plants, and I think it was because of the difficulty of the plant being able to get up through the mulch. So probably wouldn't mulch carrots until they're bigger. Alright, so green beans, you may not need your cutters. You just start plucking them. As far as what size to pluck, that's kind of up to you. Those are nice healthy green beans. We're going to can them. And when you can them, they get really soft either way. So it really doesn't matter on the size. But if you're going to eat them fresh, you may want to get them when they're a little bit more slender. More like that perhaps, maybe a little bit longer. Because then they don't have as big as seeds in them. And the seeds aren't a huge problem. I mean, all of it's edible, of course. But they do make a more tender green bean if the seeds are still small. See, like these big fat ones, well, that wasn't a good example. Yeah, the seeds are actually still small in that. Good fresh, too. Man, that's good. Well, we're going to get a bunch of these. Man, that's good. Want one, Bree? My daughter does not like green beans. Man, so good. Now there's a million different varieties of green beans, purple beans, yellow beans. So when to pick them, it's kind of up to you and what you're going to do with them. Talked to somebody once, a guy who's been growing them for a long time, and he's like, yeah, you know, about that long is when I pull them. Like these skinnier ones tend to be a little more tender if you're going to cook them fresh. But once again, you really kind of got to look it over to find them all. And this is just a few plants, and we've already canned up 3 jars of green beans and had some fresh. So they produce a lot of green beans out of these plants. But leaves are starting to yellow a little bit, so they may not produce a whole lot more. We'll see. I think the key to that is I need to probably plant a few more plants at one time so that I get enough to actually can all at one time. Like what I've got so far, and keep in mind we have plugged quite a few, but this bunch of green beans might make a small jar, probably won't fill a full jar. And that's good. See if I got any more back here. Still got a few small ones. Another beauty of green beans is that just like any other legume, they help to put nitrogen back in the soil. So growing beans is always a good thing. They're really tasty. Now, of course, there's some people don't like green beans, just like anything else. There's a couple over there. Yeah, I think that's got most of them. There's a few of them still growing yet. Let me take one of these big ones. I want to show you this. Now, you want to get seeds for your green beans. They're right inside the green bean. Alright, obviously you're going to want to let them get a little bigger and dry out a bit, but that's a baby seed for a green bean. Alright, so you want to let them get bigger, but that's how you get your seeds for next year, so that you don't have to worry about buying more seed. Now come over here and look. My pepper plants are looking a little straggly, but these are last year's plants. We do have some small peppers. You can see right here. Here, come around this way, Bree. Got some here. I've got one underneath of here. One there, one there. They're all still a little bit small. A lot of tiny peppers, though. Now you'll see all of this here. This is something called ground cherry. See if I can find a good example. But they produce these little bell-looking things. And this is a weed. This is not something we planted. It's just a weed. But they produce these little bells. Here's a good example right there. All right. And inside of that bell, there is a small cherry. Oh, that one's gotten eaten. Let's see if I can find one. They're not quite ready yet. And they don't all develop. But inside of them, there's this little cherry. Now that'll turn orange, and they're really nice. They're kind of like a tomato almost when you go to eat them. So we let them grow, though it's pretty much taken over this bed. I'm probably gonna have to clean them out this year. But that's a nice one. All right, come on over here, and let's look at our spaghetti squash. Well, hang on. First, some of the other things I got going on. This is combined squash and cantaloupe. So if you look down here, you probably have to get real close for this one, Bree. Whoop, step on it. So right down in here, you can see I got a little cantaloupe growing. And that's kind of cool. Yeah, you see it? That's just a little baby cantaloupe, just starting to come out. There's another one up in here somewhere. Squash are a little prickly sometimes. Ow. Got a thorn in my finger. Always in the worst spot. Yeah. I know we had a bigger one in here somewhere. That's a lot of times a challenge. Alright, and then we got most of this is spaghetti squash. I wonder where that other one is. It was good size too. Ow, man, that thing is like in my finger. I'll find it with some tweezers later. All right, now as far as if you're looking to tell which is cantaloupe and which is squash vines, if you look here, you notice the leaves are rounder on the cantaloupe, and these have the more trifold shape on the squash. Also, the prickles on the cantaloupe are much finer than the prickles on the squash. They're a lot harsher. In fact, like you just saw, they'll actually stick into your finger. The flowers are also much smaller. And then the flowers on the squash, if I still have any, let's see if I can find one. But here's a spaghetti squash. It's doing pretty well so far. It's not quite ready yet. It probably needs to be a little darker yellow. But one of the things on a spaghetti squash, one of the ways you can tell when it's done is one, look at the stem. When the stem starts to turn a little brown, like that one's starting to get there. And two, if you take your thumbnail and you try and push your front thumbnail in and it doesn't want to go in, like this one's just barely going in a little bit, then that's probably needing a little more time. All right. The color is not always a good indication that it's ripe, but the thumbnail test is usually pretty good. And you can see, I'm not going to go in there right now because I don't want to kill all my vines. Here, come over here, Bree. You can get a better angle. Like back over here. There, you see it? So I've got some here, I got one there, I got one there, I got one here. Now this one here is pretty interesting. If you look, what's neat about that is it's got the different pattern on it. So it's not a smooth color. It's got the I don't know, what would you call that pattern? I don't know, mottled pattern with the green going through it. But the same rules apply. You want to look for the yellowing color in between the green, and then look at the stem. As the stem looks like it's starting to die back, the plants start to look like they're dying back, which these are. All right, and then once again the thumbnail test. If you can push your thumbnail into it, it's not quite ready yet. But you see, I got several more over here, and then I got 1, 2, 3 in here, 4 here, 5. So I got a couple dozen. Oh, there's a couple more in there too. 1, 2, 3 more in there. Now get a close up on this one. I want to show you something. All right, so there's something called a squash borers, all right, or squash bugs, and they will actually cut a hole through the skin and go through these little holes down into the meat of the squash. Usually when they do that, it'll ruin the squash because they'll get in there, and they also will get into cantaloupes. That's our big problem with cantaloupes has been the squash bugs. They have really eaten them up. So you want to try and get the squash when they're ready, as soon as possible. See, that's a little bit. Still allowing my fingernail to go in. But I want to get these before the bugs start getting into them. And I did plant these early this year, so that hopefully I would be able to get them sooner. But it happens a lot. They will also get into the vines and kill off your vines. Which is just something to deal with. Peas, I'm done with peas this year. I've got a few pods left, but I'm leaving those to dry out for seed. Like I don't know if you can. Well, that's fine. Let's look at my tomatoes over here and carrots. So my carrots, I did not thin these carrots. As you can see, they're packed in there real tight. The idea is that because I'm not having to worry about other people eating them, I don't mind if they're tight in there. So I can get a bunch of these smaller carrots and be thinning the carrots by getting those. Still good in salad. Still a really tasty carrot. You get a whole bunch of them and thin your carrots that way. Now you can also do like what you normally do, where when they get up about, a couple inches tall, you pull them all out, or not all, you pull out a few to make space for the others. But like I said, the problem with that is one, you lose out on a lot of your seed, and two, you don't get to do what I'm doing, pull out these little tiny ones. And we can eat those as a little snack. I lost one in there. There it is. Is that it? Oh, come here. Ah, yeah, gotcha. The top's pulled off and left the carrot behind. So if you thin them at this stage, you get a whole bunch of, oh, those are too small. Dang it. You get a whole bunch of little carrots. Let's see if I can find some thicker ones. That you can still put in salads and you can munch on as a snack. As you go along throughout the day. Oh, that's an odd one. Huh. So this is what happens though. If you look at that, so you see you've actually got two carrots there. One had wrapped around the other. And you're going to have that a lot. Now, if you're trying to sell your vegetables, people are not going to be enthused by that because they want a nice, pretty, straight carrot. But if you're going to eat them at home, does it really matter? That's why I look at it. And I basically have managed to save some seeds that would have been pulled out otherwise to thin. So this way, I get a few smaller carrots, a little more nutritional value, a little more bang for my buck, so to speak. Wait, what's that? There's another nice one. That was a good one there. Oh, look at that. Almost a real carrot. Yeah, that's probably enough for now. A couple more. Oh, that one's pretty small. Nice big fat one there. There we go. All right. Now, would they have grown bigger? Yeah, they would have. But we've thinned it out a little bit and gotten a few carrots that we can add into a salad. All right, and then the last thing I want to show you is my tomatoes. My tomatoes are coming in pretty strong. You can see I've got a lot of them. Got them down here. Got some pretty interesting shapes. This one's just starting to turn. These are supposed to be a purple tomato. And this was the first set of plants that I put in. If you can look right here, Bree, if you see right here where this has been cut off, and right here it's been cut off, that is a classic indication of tomato worms. Now, I don't know if I can find one. I think I killed them all. But tomato worms are essentially a big, long, very green-looking worm. They tend to be about that long, real fat. And some people say if you hit them with a black light at night, they'll show up better. I don't see a lot more damage right now. I'm starting to get a little bit of leaf curling. I'm not sure why that is. Probably a bit of blight or something of that nature. But worst comes to worst, we should have a good, healthy amount of tomatoes come off this plant, even if it dies back. Yeah. Oh yeah, one other thing. Let me show you this too. This is kind of cool. I just noticed it. So these are radishes. Now, I didn't really think it through, and I planted way too many radishes, but that's okay, because what I'm doing now is I'm growing seeds. If you look at these pods that grow on the radish plants, once you open them pods up, inside, this might be a little too green. Yeah, well, you can just barely see where it's starting to form seeds. All right, and that's where you get your radish seeds from, is these pods. Yeah, that's a very, very green seed. All right, so all of these pods will yield 2, 3, maybe 4 seeds. depending on how big and long they get. So I'll let them grow up. Make sure, you know, you let them be until they start to get a little bit hard and crispy. But like if you look at this one here, look at all them seed pods. It's just loaded with them. So next year, I won't have to go buy seed. All right. That is the red radishes. And this, I believe, which I'll have to follow it back down, is a white radish. You can see the seed pods are a little longer and a little bit different flower. These are more of a white flower, whereas the red radishes tend to have a little more purple to them. You can see like the purple flower here and the purple over in here. Seems to be more common amongst the red radishes. All right. So I'm not going to harvest any of the squash. I've got my green beans, I got my cucumbers. Tomatoes are still working. Don't really have any greens to speak of right now that we can eat. We got a few here and there. Like here, come over here. Let me show you another spot real quick, Bree. Now for greens here in Florida in particular. Oh, and here, look, I got a little baby eggplant growing too. Gonna let it get a little bit bigger. That's a baby eggplant. But here in Florida, a lot of the problem with greens, and I'm gonna do a video here once I get some more growing, is getting greens throughout the summertime. Lettuce stops wanting to grow, spinach stops wanting to grow. So then you're left with, what do I eat for greens? So you got things like this. This is an amaranth plant here. You can see them right there and here. And amaranth is a very tasty green that will go through the summer. And then over here, let me show you this one real quick. A couple of things here. This is longevity spinach here. This here plant, which we had a bunch of them start getting black spots and they died off, so we're growing some more to plant out. But you got these, and then this is another one that you can add into your salad. It's a moringa, a very tasty green. And then behind you, we've got the collards. Collards grow very well in the summertime. They're kind of like kale. I mean, it is a kale type plant, but taste-wise, they're kind of like a combination between kale and cabbage. And then another couple of greens that we have is broccoli greens, which are over here. The broccoli greens taste amazingly. Here, I'll let you center back up on me. The broccoli greens are really good and taste a lot like broccoli. And then if you look down in here, you see if we can get a close-up on this, Bree. We're just starting to get some head action on our broccoli. Last year they didn't do so well, so we're going to see. Hopefully they'll do better this year. And that's the only one I see so far. But it is, what, about the 15th? I think we're around the 15th of May. So I do have some spinach planted, but it did not do well. This is my, I think, sole surviving spinach plant. And you're saying to yourself, well, why don't you pull out some weeds? Well, the problem with pulling weeds is if you go out here, this out here is about 10 degrees warmer than the dirt over here underneath the plants. So if I leave the weeds, it keeps the soil cooler and allows things to grow better, which is one reason why I think that this one is still growing, because usually it's bolted out by now. And you can see a lot of it's getting eaten up, but it's good spinach. Having my lunch as I go along here. But I'll probably let that bolt out. We'll see. I really haven't found a variety of spinach that I like to grow here in Florida. If any of y'all from Florida and you know of a good spinach plant to grow that grows well here, let me know. And we'll see. Maybe I'll give it a shot and see how it goes. But that's my harvest for today. It's a lot of fun. Doesn't take long. You know, there's still some other things I can grab, like if I need an onion, I can grab an onion, or various other things. It will get better as time goes on. Right now we're still at the early part of, well, the middle part of spring, like right about halfway through spring. So in the summertime, a lot more of the cucumbers and tomatoes and all that will start really coming in. So then we'll have a lot more bountiful harvest, and we'll really have to figure out what to do with them, which we're going to do a lot of pickling and a lot of canning, hopefully. All right, but thanks once again for stopping by. Like, subscribe, and let me know what you think. And if you got ideas like different varieties of spinach that grow well, or other things you think I ought to give it a shot, let me know. Give me a comment. All right, thanks once again.